Welcome back to 107 Meridian FM, and this is Meridian Sports Show. And I'm joined by Tunbridge Wells's very own Matt Weston from the Great Britain bobsleigh and skeleton team. Welcome to the show, Matt. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Jay. Thank you.
Pleasure. Good to have you on the show. So let's get straight into the questions. I've got a long list here for you. So and it's obviously a sport which a lot of people don't know a lot about. So I'm going to kick off with congratulations to you, first of all, on winning your first skeleton World Cup medal with silver in Innsbruck, Austria in December. How did it feel to win that medal behind Latvia's six-time world champion Martin de Kers?
Well, it felt pretty good. I think if people have seen the video can probably tell how happy I felt coming off the run. But yeah, no, I felt amazing because on that track, not all of them have it, but as you come around the finish, there's like a little LED screen and it shows you what position you're sitting in at the moment. And I was just hoping to see a 1, because that meant I would have kept my spot, as I was third actually after the first run. So I would have kept my spot, and I was like, yes, I've won my first ever medal. And then the next guy who came down actually dropped behind me, so I ended up going up to second. So yeah, I was ecstatic. But then obviously by the time Martin's came down, he's pretty good. I think he's 11 years unbeaten there.
Yeah,
so he's it's a tall ask to try and beat him. But I was pretty pleased how close I got to him. But yeah, it's bearing in mind that it was only my second ever year competing in the sport. So I was, to be on World Cup, I'm really pleased about, but let alone winning a medal, I'm just like a bit, I don't think it's really sunk in still yet, because it's very much, you go from one race to the next, to the next, to the next on season. And I don't think it's really sort of sunk in yet since I've been home, but no, really, really happy, really happy.
Nice bit of success for you. It's really good to see. Let's go back a little bit. Could you tell us how you got involved in skeletons? I'm particularly intrigued about how you found out whether you're any good at the sport. Obviously, it's not the sort of thing you just go and find out about. Throwing yourself headfirst down a nice track. That's what a lot of people describe it as. Have you always been into sport from an early age? Am I right?
Big time. Yeah, I competed internationally doing taekwondo when I was younger.
Okay.
And I think that set up quite a good baseline fitness, because it's quite an all-round sport. And to actually get into skeleton, I did something called Discover Your Gold, which is like a talent ID program run by UK Sport. My old weightlifting coach, Chris Deere, he told me to go along to that and just to see what I could do, really, because I was quite quick playing rugby. Didn't really think anything of it, but I went along to that, and they had a few targets there for like how high you can jump, how far you can jump, how fast you can sprint 30 meters, and all that sort of thing. And I beat quite a few of the targets, and I was like, oh, okay, maybe I'm a bit better at this sort of thing than I thought. And then from that, your results get compiled and they get sent off to loads of different sports. One of them being skeleton. Or you could have gone to like sprint cycling or sprint canoeing. I think there was women's sevens rugby as well. Those sorts of like explosive sports. And skeleton looked at the results and go, oh, you might be good at this sport. And I did a few phases of trials, actually in Bath, where I train now, on the push track, which is basically like an on-rails version of the start. So we can practice the start all year round. And then after a few phases of that, and they actually took us to the Marines and things like that to test us mentally. Which was quite tough. They decided to take, I think, 8 of us or 9 of us to Austria to actually have a go on the ice. That's actually, funnily enough, where I won my World Cup medal a couple of weeks ago. So it's quite fitting that my first World Cup medal was where I first ever did it. But you don't start from the top when you first try it. You start from about 2/3 of the way down, and you hit about 50 kilometers an hour. Not that far. Well, for me, not that fast now, but I was like, what the hell is going on? This is crazy. Because you literally have no control. When you watch the good guys go down, it's like, okay, this looks easy, but actually
makes it look easy.
You could be going down the track, going down the track, but actually facing sideways and still traveling down the track. It's absolutely crazy how little control you actually have and how subtle you have to be. But yeah, after that, so I spent 2 weeks there, and then after that, we went home and had a bit of a nervous wait before they made the selections of, okay, would you like to join the GB program and train full time from now on? And that was, I'm on my 5th summer now, so Yeah, so not actually too long in the program, but
Yeah.
yeah, fifth summer. Just finished my fourth winter.
I'm really jealous actually. Not a lot of people know, but it's a little bit of a claim to fame of mine. You mentioned there the tracks that you use, but I trained with a British bobsleigh team at Thorpe Park years ago. So I used to compete in
Wow.
athletics for my county, and
Yeah.
there was an advert. It's obviously different now because you've been on a program to assess what you can do and that kind of thing. But I answered
Yeah.
an advert in the Athletics Weekly for any quick runners that were interested in winter sports. So I applied, went along to Thorpe Park as it was at the time, and they had a track there which is just on
Yeah.
rails, like you mentioned. And it was a rickety old bobsleigh, and I did a few sessions with them. Back then, unfortunately, to actually go on and try it on the ice in Europe, obviously Austria or wherever,
Yeah.
you had to find a
Yeah.
sponsor, and unfortunately, I couldn't find a sponsor to actually go on
Oh, no way.
and do that, which is a real shame. But obviously, things are not a lot different. Like you mentioned, going down a track.
No, it's an
Um,
expensive sport though,
it
doing this
is,
sort of thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and
Like
obviously
even the
things,
equipment we're on is ridiculously
yeah,
expensive,
totally, and
especially more for bobsleigh as well.
completely. And it doesn't sound like things have changed or not, other than the advert in Athletics Weekly. I guess is slightly different, but it's
Yeah.
just it's interesting to hear how that kind of thing happened, and it's really interesting. I,
No, that's great.
you mentioned the facilities there. How are the facilities in this country? I mean, do you have to go abroad to actually do the proper training and keep your
Yeah.
eye in for skeleton?
Yeah, so actually to train on ice, we have to travel, which at the moment we've been very, very lucky that it was only, I think, one of our weeks got changed when we were meant to come home, and we actually ended up staying out in Austria
Mm,
because we couldn't get back out, I think.
mm,
Um, that was the only thing that's changed because of COVID. But yeah, we have to actually go down on the ice tracks. We have to travel a lot, and I spend most of my winter away. It's pretty much like almost like a two-part job.
mm,
But yeah, but the summer we try and make the most of it by training on our push track, which is like you say, like just practicing the start on
mm.
rails.
Yeah,
We use the high performance gym and facilities at Bath Uni. So that's where the British program are based during the summer. And because we don't have a track like nations like Germany,
mm,
um, who actually have three or four, so it's really hard. So we have to make the most of our start. So because that's why we train so hard during the summer and on the push tracks and
mm.
stuff, so we can try and make up for our lack of track with trying to be one of the fastest starting nations in the world.
Of course, yeah. So you mentioned traveling and that kind of stuff, which is, obviously been difficult over the last 12 months. The pandemic has hit and the
Yeah.
lockdown, but has that affected you too much in terms of, obviously a lot of people have been affected by it, but sounds like you've been able to
Yeah.
travel a few times.
Yeah, I mean, it was probably more affecting me in the summer because I'm very lucky where I have like my own gym equipment at home, so I was
Mm,
still able to go to and train almost as normal as I
yeah.
could. But I think that's probably is what affected me the most. I think our organisational guys and the logistics people within British Skeleton have done a really, really good job with being able to get like exemptions and stuff for travel and being able to allow us to race. So we've done really well. Yeah, like I say, it's only that 1 week that was changed where we didn't come home. That was just before the World
Mm,
Championships. That we decided actually it's probably better to stay out rather than going home to then risk not being able to come back out for the World Championship. So
yeah.
that's the only thing. If anything, I've had it better than people being at home because I've been able to do what I normally do,
Mm,
whereas people having to work from home and
yeah.
things like that. So I'm very lucky. Yeah.
Excellent. So obviously the World Cup season's over for you at the moment. How do the next
Yeah.
few months look for you ahead of the new season?
Well, we've already started full on summer
Oh,
training.
really? Okay.
Yeah, my coach has not been kind to me this week, so I'm feeling a bit sorry for myself already. Yeah, walking around like an old man. But we're already, because it's obviously the build up to the Olympic season now.
Mm,
So yeah, it's going to be, I think, quite intense as well as enjoyable. Like there's a
mm,
lot of cool stuff that comes out close to the games, and everyone gets a bit more serious and things like that. So I'm quite looking forward to that. But I think overall it's a pretty standard, like, yeah, back into training, try and get as strong and as fast as possible over summer, and then go back out to winter and try and make the most of it, and try and hopefully get to the games.
So no real break for you guys then, by the sounds of it. The World Cup season's finished and straight back in. Is that because of the Winter Olympics are coming up, or is that normal?
It's pretty normal. We usually get a bit of time off in April, but we're actually planning to go back out to France to do a bit of training in the next few weeks. Okay. So it's kind of like starting early for our summer training, just so we can get going, because usually you lose a bit of your strength and stuff on season because you're not training as much as you do in the summer. So it's trying to get that back up as quickly as possible. Maybe a couple of weeks off in April, but that's about it. And then you crack on back training full time, 5-6 days a week.
Sports like skeleton and bobsleigh, they only really get the profile in this country when the Winter Olympics comes around, which is every 4 years. And obviously it's not a sport which only happens every 4 years. That's really, I mean, does it suffer from funding because it's not one of the high profile sports?
So skeleton, as a nation, because we've been very successful over the last few Olympics, we've actually got a pretty decent amount of funding from UK sport. So as a sport, we're very well funded. It's just as athletes, you get given some funding to like live off, basically, but it's you to attract sponsorship in such like a sport like this, where there isn't that grassroots level like rugby or athletics. There's no big presence. It's quite hard to get sponsorship to like allow you to I don't know, buy the best equipment or buy new training gear and things like that. It's so it's quite hard attracting sponsors, but I think overall as a nation we do pretty well because of our funding, and the equipment we get when we go away, and our winter stuff is all very good.
Why I mean, skeleton is one of those sports, like you say, we've had a good amount of success in over recent Olympics. Do you know any why is that? Because obviously we're not a winter nation, as a Winter Olympics nation as such, are we? Is there anything you can put your finger on as to why that is?
Well, to be honest, it's probably because we don't have a track.
Right. Okay.
So for example, Beijing, the next Olympics, nobody's been there yet, apart from obviously the Chinese. Nobody's been there, but because we don't have a track, we're very good at picking up tracks quickly and trying to make the most of it. So
good point.
I used Germany before, so I use them again, like because they've got so many tracks, they almost become very comfortable with those and are very used to the tracks that they slide on. Whereas we have to learn them, and we don't have like a home track or anything like that. So when we go to a games, we're very, very good at making the most of those runs and picking up tracks very quickly. So I think, although it's a negative for, say, World Cup racing, not having a home track and things like that, actually, when it comes to big events like the games and things like that, we're very good at making the most of it.
Yeah, because of that success and because of the reasons you mentioned, are Team GB athletes considered a threat among the other nations in skeleton, particularly?
We're definitely getting there. I think we've stepped up a lot this year, especially this winter. With we haven't won a medal in quite a few years. I'm talking like men's wise of skeleton at the moment. We haven't won a medal in quite a few years on World Cup, and actually this year, me, Marcus, and Craig, some of the other World Cup athletes, we've all won medals this year.
Yeah, there's been a few that I've noticed.
Yeah, we have three of us, 3 different people have won medals in 3 different competitions. So it's not like we've got one person who's just flying and winning all the medals. As a nation, we've come up like really strong this year, and it's really promising. And we're definitely a nation that's like, oh, okay, we've got to like sort of watch out for us, because we've got the fast starts as well as a group. So it doesn't really matter. They have to basically be on the ball to try and beat us now.
I mean, the fast starts in skeleton and bobsleigh are a massive thing, aren't they? A real, if you get a good start, then you are generally in a good position if you have a good run.
Yeah, we cut like as a rule of thumb. I mean, every track's slightly different and like conditions change, but as a rule of thumb, we say if you're a 10th faster at the top, if you have exactly the same runs as someone else, you will be 0.3 faster at the bottom. So even if you have like an average run, but you're already a tenth faster at the top, someone who has a perfect run almost can't catch you. So that's why it's such a benefit, and why we train so hard during the summer, and we do these talent ID things to get really like fast and explosive people coming through, because there's a lot of like boys coming through now who are ridiculously fast, because it's just that constant turnover where we're going, okay, we'll get faster people, and success obviously breeds success.
Definitely.
So we've got a few really fast starters coming through as well, which is really positive.
I've noticed bobsleigh over the years, not just Great Britain, but a number of other countries have actually, recruited sprinters to, to push the bobsleigh, and I'm guessing that's for the same reasons.
Yeah, basically, yeah. So we've got a few sprinters coming through, and ex like high level athletics athletes coming through. But yeah, there's, like you say, some of the bobsleigh athletes like what Joel Fearon, sub 10-second sprinter, is pushing the back of a bobsleigh. So it's crazy how fast people are getting and how explosive they are. So yeah, there's some big names from athletics moving over to winter sports.
Talking about, you brought up Beijing in 2 years' time. Sorry, not 2 years' time. It's a year's time now. It's actually a year from.
Don't remind me.
It's almost a year. It's less than a year now, isn't it, Beijing? Time flies, isn't it? And I always look forward to the Winter Olympics, probably more than the Summer Olympics, because it's a sport you don't actually get the TV time normally, and it's really enjoyable, and obviously a bit of a vested interest from my past anyway. But what you're obviously looking to make the team for next year. How do you go about that for the rest of obviously this year?
Well, it's basically on results and how you're doing that season. If you're on form that season and there is ways of qualifying 3 athletes, but usually it's 2 athletes that are qualified to go and represent GB at the games. But so you basically have to be one of the top 2 ranked athletes in the country to go to the games, and that comes from results and consistency of results as well.
Of course. Is that quite hard in skeleton? Yeah. Do you have to hit a time during this season to actually make? No, you don't. Okay.
Because tracks can change so quickly with like humidity and heat and things like that. It'd be kind of unfair for you to hit a time, or it could be that you set a time which they think is going to be really hard to break, when actually most of the field beats that time, because it's just a really quick track that day. It's all on results and numbers off the back of that.
And Beijing, obviously, it's a fair track across the world to get to Beijing. I think a lot of people wouldn't expect Beijing to be a winter sports venue, but obviously it is. This would be your first Olympics, is that right?
Yes, yeah. So my first season of training was the 17-18 season. So so I joined and basically watched the Olympic season happen. Which obviously we did really well with winning. Lizzie won gold. Laura, who's still actually racing at the moment, won a bronze, and so did Don Parsons, won a bronze. So we won 50% of the medals available. So it's a really, really good inspirer, and a really good motivator to be able to push yourself from that. So I was quite lucky coming in to see that.
Obviously, I don't want to count your chickens too much. You've obviously got to qualify to make the team, but how does the the Olympics look for if you were to qualify? You talking about a training camp and then straight to Beijing? How long would you be away for?
Well, I think we've got a training week at the start of the season, and then we basically get 40 runs before we go to the Olympics.
Wow, okay.
40 times you do it. So, which is nuts when you think, like, if you compare that to football or something like that. So you get 40 shots before you're like on this brand new, I don't know, football or a pitch, before you have to do a World Cup there. And like that's like, which is crazy when you think about it. Or like F1 saying you're only allowed 40 laps before you race. It's really it's quite tough to try and get not only what your steers you need to do down the track, but also what equipment, getting that dialed in, because that can be a massive deal. So there's a lot of stuff going on and things moving very quickly. So it's quite tough, but definitely doable. Well, we've done it before, so.
Well, I wish you all the best of luck. It's obviously going to be, a really busy year for you leading up to the Winter Olympics, and fingers crossed that you actually make the team. Just one final question. I'm really intrigued by how athletes like yourself train for a track. Because obviously, if you go to a new track, like you mentioned, you find it easier probably to tune into a track than other people do that have their own tracks to train on. But how do you become accustomed to a track? I mean, this is a sport which is not just physical, but it's mental as well, because for that reason, isn't it?
Yeah, I think the mental side of it is massive. And how you approach a track or a race, or how relaxed it is. It sounds funny, but you're going at like, I mean, my speed PB is 135.5 kilometers an hour. But and
on a tray, as it is.
Yeah, and a tea tray, pretty much. Yeah. So but the main key thing is to be relaxed, which is quite hard. It sounds very like, well, the opposites, basically going head first at that fast down a track, and also being relaxed. So that mindset and things like that make a massive deal. But being able to go from one track to another, everyone has favorite tracks, and everyone drives the sled slightly different. So everyone's going to have certain preferences of, oh, I like going to this track because it suits me better, or I really struggle here because of this one. It's being able to use your strengths on in those tracks, and making the most of what you're good at on every single track, because there's no two tracks the same. They're all different. They all have different corners. So it's using your strengths to maximize your results, basically. But it's like when you first start driving a car. When you first go to a track, it's really difficult to go, oh, okay, I'm not used to it. I'm a bit jerky, make mistakes and all that sort of thing. Whereas the more you do it, the more runs you have down, and the more comfortable you get. The when you make mistakes, they're very small, and they don't take as much out of it. It's a lot of time and the amount of run volume down the tracks that makes the difference, which again like I said, competing against nations like Germany, who as soon as they open in the winter, they're just pumping runs down and going, it's really difficult. But the best sliders are the ones who maybe aren't as best on one track, who are overall a good driver. They're the ones that tend to do the best, rather than someone who's so specialized at this one track. They might get a gold medal there, but everywhere else they're like 15th.
Yeah,
it doesn't, like, overall it's not as good as being like a good overall driver. But it's a hard skill to learn as well.
You mentioned driving the sled. You don't have a steering wheel, so tell us how do you drive a sled, because you're literally laying on it face down, aren't you, and very, very gently looking up down the track. But how are you driving it?
It's quite funny, because you use your head, shoulders, knees and toes. That's what we use to steer.
I know a song about that.
Yeah. So going down some straights, for example, because of the airflow, if I just tilt my head to one side, the sled will go that way.
Right.
And the same with like feet. If you tap the ice one way, it'll turn you like slightly here, there. But the subtler the movements, the better. But the main steering is what we do in the corners, is with your shoulders and knees. The runners that we use, the front part are like really round and like smooth and sleek, whereas the back part have had two grooves cut out of.
Okay.
So it's almost like an ice skate at the back. So you have lots of really slippy and really fast at the front, and grip at the back.
Right.
We balance on, like, you know how an archery bow, where you put some stress into it, it's like a rocking chair. That's what our runners look like.
Oh, okay.
So you balance on, we call it a footprint. You balance on a bit of the front and a bit of the back, so you've got grip and stuff. Whereas, so if I wanted to turn right, I would put my right shoulder in, so it's nice and smooth on the right side, and my left knee in, so it's got that grip on that, so it turns that way. So it's almost like a handbrake turn almost. Like, but that's how we turn the sled.
Fascinating.
It's so different, but we can't just turn left or turn right. The way we use those steers is we get oscillations in the corners, which are like, if you have a stone at the end of the string and spin it round, it doesn't just stay in a straight line. It goes up and down, up and down. That's basically what we have to try and counteract. So if I'm in a right-hand corner and the sled wants to go up, I'll steer right so to stop it from climbing. They want to make as flat line as possible. Well, generally, there's some corners where you don't, but there's generally you want to try and stop those oscillations from happening, so you're not wasting energy or taking the long route. Basically, that's how we steer. But the best guys don't look like they're steering. So it's
just laying there pretty much, and
literally, and you're like, how are they doing that? But actually, they're probably doing quite a lot of work, but you just don't see it.
Yeah, that's fascinating. You just mentioned there the sled and how it's made. Can you use somebody else's sled, or they made personally for you?
You can buy other sleds, and you can go and change sleds, but our ones are specifically made for us and how we like to steer and how they're completely customizable. So if I jumped on someone else's sled, then I'd probably be able to get down, but it wouldn't be how I would naturally drive or how I wouldn't feel as comfortable as on mine. And the saddles we have where they go around our ribs, they're made for us as well to fit perfectly. So if I jumped on someone else's sled, I probably wouldn't fit.
My final question, and heaven forbid you actually come off your sled, but is it painful when you come off a sled?
So I took
as painful as it looks.
When the World Championships just gone, it's over 2 days. I was sitting in 6th after the first day, and I took a risk on the second day, and it didn't pay off, and I actually crashed, and I was on my side quite a lot going down the run, and ice isn't soft. It's very very sharp, and the edges of the track aren't smooth either. They're like if you open your freezer and it's got like the build-up of ice, it's not smooth. It's quite rough and quite sore. But when you're going like 120 kilometers an hour, and it's just, you basically got like a bit of lycra on you, because you want to make yourself as streamlined as possible. It's quite sore. It's like being scratched quite a lot. But it's not nice. And it takes a while to slow down because you're going so fast on ice. You're just burning. People get ice burns quite a lot.
I can imagine. It doesn't look comfortable at all when you see people come off them. So it's as painful as it looks, obviously. Finally, Matt, thanks for joining us on the show. Just quickly, anybody tuning into the show and actually is quite interested in winter sports, what would you say to somebody who wants to take up something like skeleton or bobsleigh?
Well, I'd either go down the route that I went down through the talent ID thing called Discover Your Gold. That's a great way to try and get into a sport, if not skeleton, any other sports that are similar, like explosive and things like that. But if not that, you can have, obviously we can't do them at the moment, but we put on taster days for people down in Bath at the uni on the push track. So you can have a go at bobsleigh and skeleton, and usually there's a few of us athletes down there, so you get to see. We'll be able to show you and give you pointers and tips on how to try and beat your mates going down on the track. So
what a fantastic idea.
That's on the British Skeleton website. We publish those, and you can get in contact with us about those. But obviously COVID at the moment, they're not running. But as soon as they're back up, I'll be down there helping people, trying to get the most out of it.
Well, fingers crossed that we can get through this in the timings that we've been told this week. Matt, big thanks for you for taking the time speaking to us today. It's been fascinating hearing about skeleton.
Thanks for inviting me.
It's a real pleasure. It's great hearing more about a sport that you don't actually get to hear very often, so I'm hoping the listeners have enjoyed it as well. We'd love for you to come and visit us in the studio when we're able to, obviously in build up to the Winter Olympics next year. Fingers crossed for you for that. And just stay in touch and give us an update on how your training is, and we'll share that on air as well going into Olympia. In the meantime, I wish you well. Thanks for joining us. But let's end with a track from a band I know you're a big fan of. If you want to do the introduction for me.
Well, the Red Hot Chili Peppers and Snow is quite appropriate.
Very appropriate. Thanks a lot, Matt. Here's the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Thank you very much, mate.